It's 5:45 p.m., which means it's time for another edition of BCTV's Weekly Media Roundup, 545 Live. I'm tonight's host, Roland Boyden. I'll take you through a 15-minute broadcast that'll include all the latest Brattleboro FY15 budget news, including their special select board meeting from the BAM's multi-purpose room. We'll break that down. Leland and Gray finally get some positive press for their budget, and Vernon's police chief resigns just before another round of town meeting deliberations over her department, plus much more. It's a First Friday Gallerywalk edition of 545 Live as well, so we'll talk about all the things that are coming up this weekend that you can get yourself and your family involved in, and much, much more. So if you've got the time and the attention span, stick with us right here on 545 Live.
There will not be, under any conditions, an intervention in Cuba by the United States Armed Forces. We're not going to plunge into an irresponsible action just because a fanatical fringe in this country puts so-called national pride above national reason.
Welcome back to this May 2nd, 2014 edition of 545 Live. I'm tonight's host, Roland Boyden. That's rehearsal footage from the cast of Project Unspeakable as they get set to open their performance on the assassination of 4 key 60s leaders in America. That all starts tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the New England Youth Theater. For more, you can head to NEYT's website or get tickets at brattleboro.tix.org. Find out more. Again, Project Unspeakable, thanks to hardworking BCTV volunteer Ian Keel for getting us a little sample footage ahead of time there of the rehearsal. All right, and with that, it's time to launch into the headlines, and it's hard to go too far without talking about the budget in Brattleboro and that police fire upgrade project kind of unofficially tied in there as well. For more, we'll go right back into my close-up and back into the script here. The big news in Brattleboro does remain that rejected FY15 budget, as the board announced last week that they'd be pursuing a series of drastic cuts as they prepare a revised budget for town meeting members to review now on their second go-round this spring. Now that's cuts that could run as high as $1 million and see some beloved resources and positions on the chopping block. Now, it was with all that in mind that more than 200 area residents turned out for a special select board meeting this past Tuesday, only to find out that all but 8 minutes of that meeting would unfold an executive session, prompting the board to schedule a special meeting just 2 days later at the high school at the BAM's multi-purpose room, where more than 200 residents turned out again, impressively, for a second go-round as the board got a chance to break down some of the proposals they'd like to bring before the town meeting representatives come this June.
What we decide here is not going to be what happens. What happens is going to be decided at the representative town meeting. So your work isn't done yet. The names of the reps are on the website. You can look them up. You can find the ones that represent you in your district and call them up and tell them, or email them and tell them what you think, because that's where the decision is ultimately going to be made. One option is to cut the bond from $9.1 million to $7 million and to finance it over 30 years instead of 20 years. That sustains the project. It keeps us moving in the most cost-effective way in the long run to get it done and to actually solve the problems that we know we have. The second option would be to delay the second bond and reconceive the police fire solution. Take a year to reconsider that. And then the third option is to not do the bond and make any combination of staff cuts.
You can see that full special Brattleboro Selectboard meeting from the BAM's multi-purpose room, which did broadcast live on BCTV, thanks to the hard work of our executive director, Cor Trowbridge, and content specialist, Jeff Mastrioni, who are up there making sure that it was going out broadcasting, working the camera, along with the help of WTSA's Tim Johnson, who did all the audio for that meeting. It's all up to stream at your leisure at BrattleboroTV.org, where you can also see the representative town meeting from earlier this spring and all the subsequent select board meetings since. And if you do want to get a look at this upcoming Brattleboro Representative Town Meeting Part 2, Revenge of the Town Meeting, it is going to be broadcast again live on BCTV Channel 10, where you can watch it on Comcast Cable or stream it live at our website, BrattleboroTV.org. It's slated for a Monday evening meeting this coming June 2nd in that very same multi-purpose room at the Brattleboro Area Middle School. All right, moving on. Banner day for budgets in Brattleboro it was not, but for administrators at Leland and Gray this week marked the first good financial news in a long while, as their already twice defeated FY15 budget passed its third Australian ballot test this past week, this time by a convincing margin of 393 to 290. And while the process has forced budget cuts that carry with them a certain level of uncertainty, the region-wide stamp of approval means the school's board and administrators can finally breathe a sigh of relief, even if it's just until the next controversy.
We believe we have a budget in place that meets the expectations of the communities. We're going to do the best we can, but I bet you everybody's not going to be satisfied in the end. I don't think so.
Negotiations over union contracts, including teacher salaries, which had been provisionally postponed in an agreement between the district and teachers union following the previous budget vote, can now be resumed. The margin of defeat for the budget the last time around, a single vote. All right, next up, we're to stick a pin in the map to talk budget problems next in the region. I think we'll talk about Vernon for a moment here. Back into the newsroom we go. As we track heated budget debates, we can skip south to Vernon, where the town at large voted at town meeting this past March to disband the local police department entirely in favor of more occasional support from the Windham County Sheriff's and Vermont State Police offices, a move contentious enough to force a third night of town meeting deliberations then in March, and a scheduling of another special budget town meeting this coming week as well. Now, this town-wide meeting, which is slated for next week, has brought with it some other news in the headlines this week, as Vernon's own police chief, Mary Beth Herbert, announced on Wednesday that she would be resigning her post effective at the end of the week, rather than leave the fate of her local career in the hands of the town meeting body.
Moved and seconded to reduce police department funding for the ensuing year by an amount of $262,095, leaving $40,000 in the line item to be used by the Select Board in hiring the Windham County Sheriff's Department or Vermont State Police as needed.
You've been spoiled with us here. We answer just about everything you call for, we come to. Okay? State police, if you use the state police, they don't respond to medical calls. They don't respond to barking dog calls. You're not going to get 140 hours a week coverage for the same amount of money.
Some of the debate over whether or not to disband the Vernon Police Department at the original town meeting hosted this past March, which you can find to stream in its entirety, all 3 nights worth in a 2-part section. Again, it's at BrattleboroTV.org, where if you click watch, you can find that each meeting has its own series page where we've organized all these meetings together. Moving on, anyone that's ever had to turn left off of Union Hill onto Western Ave in a stick shift knows that that particular junction in Brattleboro leaves a little to be desired, with arguably the town's steepest roadway meeting Western Avenue at the same point that the residential Gateway Road Orchard Street also joins Western Ave. And included in that, there are 4 crosswalks, a town park, a popular area grocer, and they all converge on the same spot. So it's hard to know just what direction improvements should take if the town is going to pursue cleaning up that junction, prompting the town's own Department of Public Works to solicit ideas from the public. And it's there that we turn our attention for our next story, and in addition, launch into our Commons News Report, utilizing the hard work of the staff at Brattleboro's weekly independent newspaper, The Commons. So we dive into an article here from Commons staff writer Olga Peters, dubbed Public Weighs In on Preliminary Designs for a Tricky Intersection. Now that's an article that you can find just as we've done for the purposes of this here split screen you're looking at by going to commonsnewsalloneword.org or by picking up a free paper at newsstands around town, which are stocked fresh with those newspapers from the Commons each Wednesday. Now the article details the discussion from the latest public info meeting on the Department of Public Works proposed construction upgrade to the intersection. Now that's a project backed by a $70,000 state grant, and one the Department of Public Works has enlisted the design firm Holden Engineering and Surveying, Inc. from Bedford, New Hampshire to aid in. And while $70,000 is no small amount of cash from the state, it's considered small for a project in this range, with design and engineering costs already clearing out half the funds available, prompting DPW Highway and Utilities Superintendent Hannah O'Connell to tell the available public at a meeting earlier this month that, quote, $35,000 doesn't buy you a lot of construction. Now, there are some key improvements she does think they can make, especially when it comes to visibility along the 80-foot pedestrian crosswalk that spans the top of Union Hill. And according to Brat DPW Director Steve Barrett, more than 800 cars visit the intersection on an average day in Brattleboro. All right, next up. A last effort from one local resident to block a proposed I-91 park and ride in Putney before the state moves forward has been rejected by Vermont's Environmental Court. The filing comes from the town's own energy coordinator in Putney, Daniel Hovis, who filed in his capacity as a resident only against the decision of the municipality's own Development Review Board, challenging that the 24-hour streetlights required by the state for the park and ride violate the town's own zoning laws, which stipulate public lighting be kept to a minimum necessary for safety. However, in his 7-page ruling on the matter, Judge Thomas Walsh determined that the 24-hour lights to be just that, a minimum requirement for safety, as stipulated at the statewide level. Now, Hovis's proposal was for the proposed park and ride to utilize motion detectors to activate lights only when the park was in use, but according to the ruling, his filing was unable to provide the necessary proof that motion detecting lights could meet the state's safety needs. Now, we've been following this Putney Park and Ride story for a while, from all the way back when it was in the conceptual phase, already controversial. A couple special meetings were held last fall, and then on into when the state actually broke ground there and began moving forward. We've compiled a 545 Live rewind in time. Let's take a look. And a special joint meeting of both development review boards from the municipalities of Putney and Dummerston met at the Putney Firehouse behind me to discuss the upcoming project with members of V-Trans.
Our main function was to attempt to get the interstate interchanges that had surfaced as high priorities in each of the regions, and that's how this project came about.
I'm going to take the blame for not letting everybody know this was going on, because when I got into the job, I was given a list of items that had been on the boilerplate for years. This was one of them. I had no idea that people were going to be so upset about it.
A few other things to wrap up here on this edition of 545 Live, including checking in with the students of the high school's morning news advisory broadcast team, BUHS TV, to tell us about this weekend's weather. Take it away, guys. What's in store for us?
On Saturday, it's going to be a bit warmer with a high of 64 and a low of 43 and a 20% chance of rain. And Sunday, it's going to be absolutely beautiful with a high of 72, low of 54, and a 10% chance of rain.
We're going to move on now with our BCTV video calendar. Take it away, Roland. It's a First Friday as we get ready to launch into May here, and First Fridays mean Gallerywalk. Now, it's worth mentioning that Gallerywalk has its own official website where you can find out about all the downtown galleries and beyond. On into Sunday, May 4th we go then, and we'll start by talking about Alistair Fraser and Natalie Haas. This dynamic duo again gets set to take the stage at First Baptist Church 7 p.m. this coming Sunday, and it's where our next Spotlight video takes us now. All right, that does it for a Friday Gallerywalk edition of 545 Live. Thanks for checking in with us. We'll be back next week with another full live broadcast next Friday, 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on BCTV Comcast Cable Channel 8. We'll also return to our official website, BrattleboroTV.org, and YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrattleboroTV, for a series of web content uploads throughout the week. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. See you next time.
And Kennedy got pressure to pursue the Cold War in Southeast Asia, too.
I'm sorry, Admiral Arleigh Burke, Army General George Decker, General Lyman Lemnitzer, and JFK.
And that means bombing China, Hanoi, and maybe even using nuclear weapons.
If we're given the right to use nuclear weapons, we can guarantee victory.
These people are crazy.